Welcome to Roadcase, the podcast that explores the live music experience. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Josh Rosenberg, and I'll be taking you on a journey through in-depth interviews with performers and key people in the industry to explore the magic of live music, how it can be totally transformative for both fans and performers, and we'll look at how they take it all out on the road. It's going to be a great ride, so here we go. Okay, everyone, welcome back to Roadcase. I'm really excited to have you for this special episode. And if you've been here before with me, of course, I always remind you to get involved with the Roadcase community, and you can do that in a number of different ways. We've got a Patreon site at patreon.com/roadcase where we post episodes early for members, and we've got other goodies there. So go join the party over at Patreon if you can, and or send me an email. I'm at info@roadcasepod.com. Love to hear from you. Let me know what you think. Send suggestions for guests, or just say hi. I'm down for any kind of communication these days. It would be great. You can get in touch with us through the socials. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Our handle is at RoadcasePod. And we have a YouTube channel called, oddly enough, it's called Roadcase Podcast, where we post episodes as well. So check that out. And of course, you know that you can subscribe to this podcast on your favorite listening platform. And when you're there, it'd be really helpful for us if you can rate and review us. So if you're listening to us on a channel right now, put it on pause and, rate and review. Like I said, that's funny. Love for you to get involved with the Roadcase community. Again, thanks for being here. Really excited this week to have one of my favorite poster artists and the designer of the Roadcase logo, Clinton Reno, renowned poster artist for many bands such as My Morning Jacket, Arctic Monkeys, Dirty Heads, Ray LaMontagne, among others. And I've had the opportunity to work with Clinton, and he's just a great guy to work with, and I love his creative process. And of course, I see inside that mind in his product, which are super beautiful, evocative posters of live events. And, the gig poster world is such an integral part of the music scene, which basically combines images with music and gives people a way to have a piece of paper that identifies them with having been at that show. And it's always a great kind of reminder and a beautiful kind of memory of a particular show, which also functions as a work of art. I collect a bunch of posters from shows that I've gone to, some shows that I haven't gone to. I really love having them around, and it's kind of part of my life. And I wanted to have Clinton on the show to sort of talk about the gig poster world, what that means to him. He talks a little bit about how he got his start, which is, in a DIY, humble way, just dropping off a couple posters at a venue in his hometown of Columbus, Ohio, and eventually that got him some notice and built him some relationships with bands. And of course, he got involved with My Morning Jacket. And it's a really interesting story and funny, coincidental story of how he actually had some contact with him over the years and then ran into a band member. And that's how the relationship kind of kicked off. But we'll talk about his relationships with the merch company, the creative process, how he works with the companies and the bands to produce the product, sometimes in a joint venture, most recently at Red Rocks with Guy Burwell for a My Morning Jacket 2-night run that they did at Red Rocks. Talked a little bit about the Aftermarket and those how prices can get pretty high in the Aftermarket and what that kind of looks like. Obviously, shows have been limited this year. There's been some streaming stuff which has elicited some need for Clinton to produce posters for streaming events. He did one recently for Margo Price. But, clearly the show shutdown has affected this part of the live music ecosystem. But Clinton's doing his best. But this is a great way to kind of look into Clinton's world, and I really love the combination of art and music, and that's what I love about gig posters. So this is a great episode with Clinton Reno. I know you'll really enjoy it. I want to thank Clinton again for being here. Thanks to all of you for tuning in once again to Roadcase, and here we go. Hey, Clinton, good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, so you're in Berkeley, right? The town of my birth is where you live now.
Yep, we're out here in California, Northern California.
Yeah, the home of creativity and the Grateful Dead and Owsley Stanley.
Yeah,
And probably
I'm actually like a few blocks away from I think Creedence Clearwater Revival's practice space. Maybe I have to look that up, but yeah.
like CCR's like current space or
No,
old
no, no,
space
no, no,
or
no,
what?
no, no, no.
Yeah.
Back in
It's like what?
back in the beginning days,
Oh yeah.
long ago.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure, for
they
sure.
shared a space. I think they shared a space with the North Face, like the North Face headquarters. Like North Face started here in Berkeley, so
Oh,
like
really?
the second half of that building was Creedence's recording studio or
Oh,
practice space.
interesting. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and there's so much musically going on in Northern California. You know,
yeah.
I spoke recently with the bass player from this band called Ace of Cups, which is an all-female band that was around in the late '60s. And I spoke to Denise Kaufman, who's the bassist, and she was on the Further bus, you know, with Ken Kesey and all those dudes going around doing the acid test. So that was pretty cool. You know,
Nice.
she went to Berkeley back in the day, and I was born in Berkeley. Both my parents went to Cal, so I got roots around there. Are your roots
Nice.
from there?
No, I'm Ohio born and bred.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I remember that.
yeah, grew up in Xenia, Ohio, small little town in between Columbus and Cincinnati,
Yeah.
on like right in the middle there on 71, and went to an art college in Columbus and kind of just stayed there for a while. Met my wife there, and she ended up getting 4 degrees at OSU and then landed a job out here. So we thought it was a good opportunity to kind of like, spread our wings and fly out a little bit, get out
Yeah. So,
here.
so she got a job or something out in California, and you kind of and everyone
At
just went on
UC.
at
Yep,
the
at UC.
UC. Oh,
Yep.
okay, okay. What's she
Yeah.
a professor of?
So she it was a she had her PhD in oh my gosh, this is a bad time to blank on this.
Yeah.
Um, but she came out. It
If
was
you dig yourself too big of a hole, I'll edit it out, man.
it's all child and maternal health
Uh-huh.
studies. So she came out here to be part of an organization that did work with that.
Oh,
So
okay.
she did some teaching here and there, but it was mostly for that role.
Right. Maternal health.
Yeah, child and maternal health. Yep.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so the three kids things that we were just talking about is kind of that you have and that I have too kind of makes more sense from your side
Yeah,
now.
yeah, for sure.
Well, that's cool. So your art background, was that something that you went to school for, or like when did you first know that you wanted to be an artist, graphic artist?
Well, um, I think my mother would tell you that I was drawing as soon as I could hold a pencil.
Ah,
I have a sketch. I have a sketch somewhere that I did when I was 3 years old. It's of Grizzly Adams because that was a popular TV show back when I was young. And
yeah, me too.
so coincidentally, side note, he visited me in the hospital when I had spinal meningitis. So that was huge. But anyway,
Oh, wow. How did that come about? I mean,
well,
the Grizzly Adams thing.
I don't know. I think he was just visiting sick children, which is, that sounds awful considering that. I mean, I'm here, which is a good thing. But
Yeah.
so I had a little sketch, and so I think I could sketch as long as I was able to, like I said, as long as I was able to hold a pencil, and I just sketched and sketched. And then my mother when she would go to the grocery, a lot of times she would park me at the big rack of like magazines and comic books, and I would just sit there and I would read through GI Joe comic books, and really it just kind of it almost even informed how I do my work now, in terms of like very comic style, the bold lines and the flat
Yeah.
colors and things like that. So I drew and drew. I think I did, three main things when I was a kid. I played with my played with my Star Wars and G.I. Joe figures. I practiced baseball, and then I drew. So those three things, as an only child, that's kind of pretty much all I did. And then I ended up going to Columbus College of Art and Design for graphic design, or for illustration rather, and then graduated from there, and then kind of just fell into the rock poster world in a very, very odd way, but it's something that I am very excited about, having found, because it's.
How did you fall into it, or how did you get into the gig poster world?
Well, so I have, at one of my 9-to-5 jobs, I was working with a man by the name of Chip Midnight, and he had a couple of different things going. He had I think a blog at that time.
Is that when you're out here in Berkeley already?
No. We've only been in Berkeley here now for the last 4 years. So.
Oh, okay.
So this was back in, the early 2000s, I think.
Okay,
maybe
so
even earlier.
Chip Midnight.
Yep, Chip Midnight. He wrote for a magazine in Columbus called Moo Magazine, which was big for a little while. And then, so he would have me do these characterizations of different bands that he was interviewing for the week. And I think I did one of Sloan. I think I did one of, I'm trying to think who else I did one for. But I ended up doing one for a band called Buck. And Pepper Berry was one of the members of Buck, and he happened to have loved the illustration that I had done. So I think through a weird series of events, he had started another band called Bobot Adrenaline. And so I started doing some kind of just some flyers for them, black and white flyers. And then along comes a man named Robert Duffy, who had donewaiting.com. And I started doing some work for him and for some of the local bands there in Columbus, some flyers and things like that. So that was fun, and that was it was good. But I was doing them all digitally, and I was printing them all out, at what was Kinko's at the time, or at Staples. And so there's another poster artist here in Columbus, Ohio. His name is Mike Martin. He works under the name Engine House 13. He had a show at a tattoo gallery, or a tattoo shop that has a gallery space in the front. And I went to see the show and see his posters. And I met him, and he's an amazing dude. He's the nicest guy. I always joke he's gruff but lovable. He's such a good dude. But I introduced myself to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've seen your work around. It's good, but you will never get anywhere until you start screen printing these." And it's kind of deep down in the back of my mind, I had known that, but I didn't want to kind of face it, because screen printing is obviously a lot of work, and it's physical labor as well. So we kind of chatted about that. I talked to him. That also, right around that time, was when the website gigposters.com was huge. It was, an amazing, amazing resource. It was gig posters from all over the world. Any artist that was doing them they were able to upload them onto gigposters.com. It exists still as that domain, but it is not what it was. So that was nice, because the resources were there. There was a forum you could go, and you could kind of just even learn how to do a lot of things. There were screen printing forums within this forum, or screen printing threads. So I would just go in there, and I would be able to read, okay, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. I had some limited experience with screen printing in high school and college. So I knew the basics enough. So with Mike's help from Engine House 13, with the Gig Poster Forum, I was kind of able to kind of get it started. And from there, it was just all trial and error until I felt like I was in a good enough spot that I could get these out in front of people. And once I did, it was a lot of a lot of free-ish work up front. It was a lot of dropping posters off at like a venue called Little Brothers in Columbus that's sadly no longer there, or getting some relationships struck up with. I don't even know what it was called back then anymore, but I don't know if it's still the LC now, but it's there. It's one of the bigger venues there for the level of band that with which I work. It's one of the bigger venues there for that. So I just started dropping those posters off with a business card, and from there it kind of just became a thing where, like, I think one of the biggest ones, for example, and I'm glad I did this one. I did for my morning jacket. It was a bear, and I dropped that off, and I dropped off. And typically back then, there are all kinds of rules and etiquette that you need to follow in terms of the gig poster world. There were some people could maybe argue this, but it was a little bit more free back then. You can kind of get away with a little bit more than you can get away with now. So
in terms of what?
Well, like now, like official rock posters versus through the venue. Like through the venue is more frowned upon now.
I mean, I was going to ask you, because you were talking about kind of distribution and how, dropping off posters when you first got started. Would you just take up independently, go, oh, I like this band, I'll just create a poster for them, and then I'll just work the venue into it, and I'll put them on gig poster or whatever, without talking to the band or without talking to the venue initially?
Yeah. I mean, I would absolutely not. I would not say you should do that now. I mean, you can do it in order to get your foot in the door, but I think even back then I was like selling my copies, which I would absolutely not do now. That's essentially like a bootleg, which is not a good thing, especially because now with the gig poster scene as big as it is, the likelihood of the band having a poster for the show you just dropped posters off for is very, very strong. So, but back then, like, I mean, it was a big thing. There were a lot of people doing it, but it hadn't really like caught fire again.
Yeah. So what year are we talking about now?
I'm like 2003, 2004.
So the world wasn't that, and the world of gig posters was not as big at that point.
I think it was, but I think, and again, someone much more knowledgeable on this subject can probably school me on this, but I think over the course of, like, with gig posters popularity and with with CDs and with all forms of like actual physical music going more to a digital format. I think it's mentioned in one of the poster books that Paul Grushkin wrote, but like when you have a lack of a physical item that you could purchase, people that go to these shows, they want something that they could still, like, something tangible that they could take away from the event. So the drop in CDs and albums, though albums are now back a little bit as well, but with the drop in that, I think, and then the rise of gig posters, it kind of like they kind of met in the middle at the right time to where this gig poster thing just blew up. So, you go to these shows, you have the album already downloaded onto your iPhone or iPod at the time, and you want something, so you buy a shirt or you buy a poster, so they have something that they could take from that night, and it's even more special too, because the gig posters for that evening, so it is a very specific moment in time that it's capturing. So that kind of like has all really blown up since, over the last 16 or 17 years. And I think, early on, like venue posters that were commissioned by the venue, those were more common. And people kind of like, that's how a lot of people maybe even got their start a little bit. But nowadays it's much more, official posters are really only through the band or through the band's merchandising company. They are meant to serve as merchandise for the band to make money. And so
But it
knowing
wasn't
that,
like that when you first started.
I mean,
I mean, you were trying to just get your foot in the door in some kind of ad
yeah,
hoc way to kind of make
yeah,
that happen,
yeah,
taking
but
advantage of the loose kind of structure of those early gig poster days. Is that
yeah,
true
I think,
characterization?
I think so. Yeah. But I mean, I will say though that the, for everyone that was doing it that way, but that was still trying to do something right with that, is that they'd always would give a portion of the run to the actual band. So it's kind of a good faith gesture. Like, I created these, but I want you to have them. And and in most cases early on, I wasn't really selling those that much anyway. It was, no one knew about them, no one saw them anywhere. So it was more just a matter of like getting my foot in with the band itself. So, but once that happens, then like I dropped a stack off. So generally the band would get a stack of everything.
Hmm.
Like Greg Dooley got a bunch for the Twilight Singers, and I ended up on the bus with him. With he and Andy Man from CD 101 because of it. So like those types of things kind of happen, and then you just like build these relationships, and then they put you in charge of, or they put you in contact with, like, this is the guy that handles my merchandise, please talk to him. So it's kind of how you form those relationships. And
Yeah.
yeah, the My Morning Jacket one was funny because I had done a poster through Live Nation for them up in Cleveland, and they loved it, I guess, and they wanted to put it on their New Year's Eve T-shirt. But what was funny about that is I got the call about that from Live Nation the day I had my wisdom teeth taken out. So I got that call, and I'm like, this is amazing. I'm not even sure if this is actually happening or not. So, but
What year was this?
so that one would be like, maybe that would be 2006.
Yeah.
And that was an actual screen printed poster, and that was through Live Nation. And again, like, the venue posters were like, I don't think, and again, like, I don't want you to get a ton of messages from people that are like, he's so wrong on this, but I don't think that people were doing individualized posters as much back then, like through the bands or through band merch companies. So like that poster might have been like the only poster for the evening. And so My Morning Jacket saw it, they loved it. That was 2006. A few years later, I was at an event at the North Market in Columbus, Ohio. Just like a Sunday afternoon thing, selling posters. Like, they had a bunch of street artists and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like, so I was selling some stuff, and it's kind of towards the end of the night, and a guy walks up and he's like, "These are really good." I'm like, "Thanks." He's like, "Have you ever done anything from My Morning Jacket?" And I told him that story that I just told you.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh yeah, that's amazing. I think I remember that." He goes, "I'm in the band," and
Oh, who was?
it ended up being Bo. And I was just like, "Oh, this
Oh,
is
that's crazy.
really strange." And it was funny because so they had a show there at the LC that night, and the LC is like, walking distance to
Yeah.
to the North Market. So I'm sure he was just kind of like, doing a walk before the show.
Um,
But it was so funny because as soon as he said it was him, then I got a little nervous. I'm like, up until that point I was fine. So that was kind of amazing. But I think I sent him off with a couple posters, and I think they came back around maybe a year later, and I did a poster for them, still having had not any contact with them outside of that New Year's Eve T-shirt a few years back. But I dropped off a bunch, and with my name, and I said, I think I addressed it to Ruckus because Elizabethtown was one of my favorite movies at the time, and My Morning Jacket, or a bunch of at least three of the members of My Morning Jacket are in the band called Ruckus that plays
mm,
Freebird in that movie. So I
oh,
addressed it
that's
to
funny.
Ruckus, and
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I'm a huge fan of you guys. I did this poster for you. Here's my email address. So
Right.
by the time I got home from dropping them off, an email from Jim, and kind of just from there, it's kind of it's gone on from there. So,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
yeah,
Wow. Wow.
they've
Wow.
been,
Was that the bear icon?
yeah. Well, it was the bear with the hummingbird in the glowing orb.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So is it safe to say that you're the origin of the bear?
Oh
So,
no,
no,
I
they had
didn't.
the bear before that.
Yeah, they had all that. They had those. I think they've had Poochie and Denise on
Yes,
stage
on
for years
stage.
and years.
Right.
So, and I think I went with the bear because of that. So, um, but yeah, that's been like an amazing. And I've actually even gotten to know a couple of them. They're, they're the nicest dudes in the whole world. So it's been a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
fun to work with them.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's a that's a long way from just like, you know, throwing posters out to a venue, but,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
so is that how you got into sort of a more bigger on a business side, gig poster business, or was that kind of was that one story of a couple different ones, or is that the way that you got in?
So I think that I guess you could say it kind of almost blossomed a little bit from that point. I mean, I would do posters for other bands that, like I did a lot of stuff for Over the Rhine out of Cincinnati, Ohio,
Mhm.
uh, and such an amazing duo. They are they're awesome. I love them dearly, and I had done a ton of work for them too. So this stuff was kind of like online at this point in time and like visible enough. And so as I started doing more and more jacket posters, I would get approached from what would then end up becoming like different merch companies. So, and I don't know when the merch companies kind of started to take off, but um, like there will be certain merch companies that have like a roster of 40 or 50 bands.
Yeah.
And within that roster, they have a person or two people or three, or I don't even know how many, that deal with each band. So these merch companies will have some person that'll deal with Arctic Monkeys, and that person will be like, okay, Arctic Monkeys has the 2020 show tour. I need 20 individual posters. So that person then hits 20 different artists and different deals, different merch companies, but basically the end result is a tangible rock poster that they could have on their table for the night of the show. And sometimes they'll let you sell them after, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll give you a cut of the proceeds. There's all kinds of different ways. Different companies handle it differently. But
Yeah.
so like as that, and then these merch company people, I think they move around a little. I don't know, I'm not 100% sure, but like someone might move to another company and they're like, hey, I have this band now, so do you want to do some Dirty Head stuff? I have this band now. Do you want to do some of this? So it just kind of like blossoms out from there. And then if another person within their company is looking for a recommendation of like, oh, I've got this band. What artist are you guys using these days? And they can kind of like, oh, Reno's good. He could do this. So and so's good. He could do this. So, she's good. She's amazing. That kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know you're a jacket fan because you and I have talked jacket a lot, and you know that how much I love your artwork in general, and how much I love the jacket posters that you've done. It speaks to kind of the evocative nature of a show poster as a work of art, as a souvenir, if you will, to not kind
Yeah.
of like to use sort of a lower brow term. I think for it, it's more. I view it. I collect posters. It's a
Yeah.
work of art. I've got tons of your work. Do you have to like the band to do to do that work? Does it help?
I think I will say that there have been some posters that I've done for bands I'm not as familiar with, but I always try to make sure that I'm like listening to some of it, that I'm trying to get a feel for some of it. I think it feels a little, no disrespect to anyone that does it, but sometimes it can feel, to me personally, it feels a little disingenuous. I want to make sure that I'm creating, because ultimately what I want to do is I want to create something that resonates with the people that love this band, because I don't want inventory. I don't want the band to have inventory. I want them to all sell that night.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
that's the goal. So you really want to make sure you're hitting that target audience with, and a lot of that comes from like being familiar enough with the band to know what you need to do. That's not to say I haven't done it, but at the very least, I've done is enough homework or listened to enough of the music that I feel comfortable kind of putting something out there that resonates, because
So
ultimately
you,
that's what you want to
yes.
do.
So you kind of like, does that mean listening? What does that mean for you? Listening to the band, getting the vibe, kind of.
Yeah, a lot of it will be because anymore there are a lot of, I mean, obviously they're touring on a certain album generally, so you go to that album, you take a look at like what are they trying to get across in terms of like their album art, in terms of their merchandise. Like that's the very first kind of like your entryway into like the feel of it. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to some songs off this record. I'm going to listen to this record. I'm going to kind of like dig through some lyrics to see what's happening here. And that's kind of a way to just to kind of to give you a sense of what they're trying to kind of convey as well, because you want to give a nice visual representation of what they're trying to convey, I think.
Yeah, and you seem to work the venues into it as well. When is that sort of a factor for you?
A lot of times that's done. I'd say probably 7 times out of 10 that's at the band's request. I
Okay.
think a lot of times it helps. It helps the, not only is the date on there, but also this is where I live, like this venue or this building or this is located here in this town that I live in, so
Mhm.
I think it kind of helps either give that additional connection to that night, I think. So, and it's, I mean, and like it's kind of cheating a little bit too, because it gives you some content when
Yeah,
you
it
need
gives you
it,
an anchor for the
Yeah.
idea and what you're going to do.
Yep.
And then there's how do you know, like from your perspective, how do you know that you're capturing a vibe that is going to resonate with the fans? If you're not particularly, a really big fan of that music, because not everybody obviously is going to be a fan of every band,
Right.
clearly.
Right.
So how do you know that because you initially said that what you're trying to do something that's going to resonate with the fans.
Yep.
How do you know that you're doing that?
Well, obviously with the merch companies and with the people that are working those relationships, there's there's an approval process. So I'll kick
Mhm.
like, anywhere from 1 to 4 sketches, really rough sketches, and kind of like describe them. I'll kick them to my contact, and the contact then at that point in time takes it back to the band, and they're like, how are you feeling about these? And they'll be like, oh, this one's good, we love this one. Can you do this with this one? So they'll bring that back, and then before it ever goes to print, I'll show them a final of what it's going to look like. And so they generally, if it's done right, you're getting band approval, you're getting merchandise company approval, and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
at that point in time, I feel like if the band's happy with it, then
Yeah, for sure. Then you're
we're
good.
good.
But how
Yeah.
often is that initial sketch kind of kicked back to you?
I should knock on wood here. It's not well when you have when you have a certain relationship with certain bands, and you have a certain style and you have a certain kind of like way of working, then, and I could be wrong, but I think that they might come to me specifically for what I do.
Yeah.
So generally when I send my sketches, I've had some come back, 1 or 2 times, but generally it's a pretty good, especially if I'm giving them a few options. Generally, I could get it to a good spot in 1 or 2 rounds, and I think that, like I said, that's because like, oh, Reno does this, so we're gonna go to him for this one. This is Guy Burwell's style. We really want this for this one, so we go see Guy.
Yeah.
So I
Depending
think
on
that,
like the band, the night,
yep,
the
yep,
venue, for
yep,
example. So they kind of
yeah,
already have a sense of what you wanted to do. You talk to them
right.
about that. You throw a sketch with kind of those ideas and the research that you've done.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So like it's not like, I'm not doing something for someone that's going to be like, what is this? What, it doesn't even make any sense to us.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
know what they're
yeah.
getting when they come to
Yeah.
me.
I mean, you worked on my logo for the podcast. That's your
Right.
work, which I
Right.
fucking love.
Right. Thanks.
And well,
Thanks.
I mean, I had an idea for, Roadcase, and I was like, well, let's just do a Roadcase.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So I mean, like, it's not much unlike that. Like we went back and forth a couple times. There's a couple different sketches or a couple tweaks in terms of
mhm,
coloration.
yeah.
Um, Obviously with this being a logo and something that's visible, you had more say than we would necessarily in a poster, because it's something that kind of lives for a long time.
Yeah, that's true,
Um,
right. Yeah, these are
I
just
mean,
gig posters. They don't care. They just throw them
well,
out. No, I'm kidding.
no, no, I mean, I just mean that, like, for example, if I'm doing like, there's more scrutiny on a T-shirt than there is on a poster for one night. So the posters, when you consider they have anywhere from 10 to 30 different posters, there's a little less scrutiny on each one, because as long as it feels like it really resonates with us, with our bands or with our fans, then we're going to be good with it. But a t-shirt lives the entire run of the tour, so it has a lot. It has to kind of like resonate with a lot more people and in different towns and things like that. So
How often do you work directly with how often does the artist or band members ever get involved with you, apart from that first interaction you had with Bo and
I think
and Jacket?
I think it's less. I think it's less now, which is okay. I think that, like, obviously they've got so much on their plate in terms of things they don't really want to, 30 individual big posters is a kind of a lot to manage. So maybe a little bit more so if it comes to a t-shirt or a hoodie or something like that. Like I'll get feedback like, Jim wants you to do this or whatever. But generally it's all through merch at this point in time, which is fine. It makes sense, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and they have their brains wrapped around everything about the band and can reflect accurately the vibe that they want for you to do. How'd you come up with all right, this is like one specific poster thing, just for on the record, like not a big deal, but what's with the lighthouse for Nautica Pavilion? Was that just kind of like just the nautical kind of theme because it's right on the water? The Cleveland one, Cleveland 20.
I'm pretty sure, and hopefully no one in Cleveland triple checks this, but I believe that's an actual lighthouse up there in Cleveland.
There is an actual. Okay, well that's like my Cleveland knowledge. I mean, I've been to that venue, but I didn't know that. It looks like a really accurate, good place for for a lighthouse. In fact, at that show, were you? I don't know if you were at that show or you were in Cleveland.
I was in Berkeley. I was in Berkeley by then.
During First Light, it was like the second or third, a massive river transit, boat comes steaming across the river right behind the band during the last part of First Light, the song.
Yeah.
It was extraordinary. It was humongous, like an ocean. Oh no, it was like, I don't know. It looked huge, right? But then the song ends, and the ship. Anyone who's a Jacket fan has maybe heard this. It's also on YouTube, I think, somewhere. The ship blows its foghorn after that song ended, and the whole place just completely erupted.
That's amazing.
Like, yeah.
That's awesome.
It was totally cool. Sorry. You talked about Guy Burwell before. You recently did a collaboration with him. Like, how does something like that work, and what was the process with that? Because you did a collab with him. I know the latest one was Red Rocks 2019.
Yep. Yeah. I've been following Guy's career for a long time. He had been in it. I think he's been in it little, 3 or 4 years longer than I have. And he and I had talked at different venues kind of like throughout the course of our time together. We've been at shows, selling posters and things like that. And he had done a lot of jacket work as well. And I was on the My Morning Jacket forums here and there, kind of like I like to go back through and read, kind of like even get a sense of what they're liking and what they're not liking. And they had mentioned, they're like, who's going to do these posters for Red Rocks? What's this going to be like? There were only 5 shows that year for Jacket. And so it's funny because like I go back and forth between, I want to be everywhere all the time, my artwork everywhere. And then there's some other part of me that's like, I do not want to wear out my welcome. I want to go out on a high note, showmanship. I want to be like, I don't want people to get tired of me. Something I'm very, very worried about.
That's never going to happen, dude. At least
well, I appreciate that. But
I mean, your designs are always so incredibly varied. I mean, come on.
Well, thank you. So with there only being 5 shows that year, I knew that that Jacket would choose 5 artists with whom they'd worked that they knew could kind of bring home something that was going to sell out and sell out quickly. So I had the idea. I'm like, you know what? I think it would be amazing instead of it being, like who's going to do this Red Rock show, what if two people did it? So I contacted Guy and to see if he was even into it. And he had worked with Color Test, which is the merch company that I work with. And they're like, yeah, let's just try this out. So Guy and I went back and forth with sketches. It was very, very fun. And the fact that there were only 5 shows that year kind of like it upped the pressure, but at the same time, it gave us a little bit of like breathing room because there wasn't another jacket show like in 2 weeks that someone was doing a poster for. So we kind of had time to kind of like finesse it. And that was great fun. That was definitely a highlight of my gig poster time. And I will say that, and if anyone's listening to this and then goes to the website, my website, and they see that it's actually just an Etsy page, the jacket poster from 2019 completely broke my site, and we've my buddy and I have been working since then to kind of try to get it back up because it was the traffic and everything. It just like completely blew it up. And the host company that I work with was like, you can't have this many people come into your site. So they yanked it.
Because they kicked you out because you were doing too well.
Well, I mean, the what I was paying for. Yeah. For what I was paying, because I was, I'm paying like, I get visitors, but I don't get the traffic that brought in. That brought in some insane amount of traffic. So
yeah, how does the Aftermarket, is that sort of part of, you give a band X amount of posters and you get to keep a certain amount of posters?
Yeah, that's all done in the negotiation phase of like, sometimes there will be different places they'll pay for design fee, they'll pay for the printing, and then you'll also get, anywhere from 10 to 40 is a lot. But obviously what they want to do is they want to make sure that their needs are covered, which is absolutely how it should be. So the big question is, like, for that jacket show, what is the right amount of posters to print for the night of, and what's a good amount for me and for Guy to each have? So we kind of went back and forth on that for a little bit and came up with a good solution. And, we were able to throw them up once the shows had all been over. The posters themselves sold out before Jacket took the stage each night. And so there wasn't any money we were at that point in time taking from the band, because that's ultimately you want to avoid that. So, I don't throw posters up of, I think I have some Tyler Childers posters, for example, that he still has on his site. So I won't put them on mine. And so that's,
okay. So
that's
you
done.
sort of, communicate with so you're not kind of overlapping with other things.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, those were hot posters. I'm still looking for a night 2 foil. So if there's anyone listening to this, I've got other things. I might even have an extra night 1 foil that I can trade for a night 2 foil, or the regular ones. So anybody, and other items.
just hit the jacket Facebook group. They're very helpful.
I'm just putting that out there right now. So what is so evocative about images that are juxtaposed with a show date? Because there's just such a land grab for these posters at shows, and like, how do you view that?
I think that, like, it's, I don't know. It's kind of like, I like the idea of capturing like that moment in time. I tell my wife all the time, I'm not a really good storyteller. I don't know that I could ever like write a comic book and do a story, but like capturing a moment in time that I feel like I could do. And, just something that's very, as striking as it can be, that really, like, once you see it, it takes you back. You're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that show was amazing. I have this poster in my hand. It just instantly brings it all back. I think that's the goal. That's what I'm trying to achieve each time. How successful I am, I don't know.
You're very humble, and you're extremely successful at that.
Thank you.
I mean, as I have in the background here
At least,
on our Zoom
at
call, I
least,
got like
yeah,
one. I could have put.
yeah,
I didn't pander too much to the audience because I know you and we've talked a bunch of times, but I just have the one there. But that's
yeah,
an example. That's 2017 Forest Hills
yep,
jacket. That's an example of just knowing the band and knowing
yep.
that Jim uses. It's the one with the what's that thingamajig called?
Is it an omnichord? Is that right?
No, that's not the Omnichord. The
What is it?
Omnichord's the one for Touch Part 2, but that's it's the recorded mechanism thing that he uses for wordless and he uses for a victory
Yeah,
dance, right?
yeah,
Is that
yeah, yeah,
called?
yeah.
That's not the I don't think it's the
I,
Omnichord. Maybe I'm
now
wrong.
I'm now I have no idea. Now I'm worried.
Okay.
I don't want to say anything wrong.
Yeah, all right. We'll figure it out. But it's also glow in the dark, which is cool.
Yep,
So
yep,
yeah, I mean, they're evocative images, even if it's not really a specific band, an icon. It's got the date, it's got the venue, and it's got this
yep.
amazing, amazing artwork. And I collect tons of different artists, and yours always stands out for me. So I
Thank
thank
you.
you for that, and I think it's amazing. Um, what music do you listen to primarily?
It's funny because I run the gambit of I'll go back and forth between a whole mess of things. Sometimes I'll have, believe it or not, sometimes I'm like I put yacht rock on when I'm working cleaning a house with the boys, for example, or
Mhm.
sometimes if
Some
I
music you don't have to listen to.
yeah, just like stuff that's get a little bit of um uh Michael McDonald in there. But I think I'll do a lot of the bands that I go to see. I listen to. I think Churches was here a couple of times. I saw Churches.
Mhm.
A lot of Brian Fallon. I've been enjoying his latest record. But then actually, what's nuts is I dip really heavy into the pop sometimes too. Like the Dua Lipa record has been amazing.
Yeah, I
Um,
like it. I like it. It's not
all
not
that
bad. Not bad.
yeah, like that's just been like fun stuff. So I'll go back and forth quite a bit in a day. And a lot of times I'll just have my iTunes on shuffle and whatever comes up comes up. But and I listen to a lot of my friends' stuff too. I listen to uh, my buddy Billy Peak. I listen to some of his Bicentennial Bear or Miranda Sound. Just all the way up and down.
Yeah. Well, going back to the artwork, something just keeps coming back to me is how you began as a comic book artist and enjoying comic books, because that really drives it home for me, because I really do think it's that kind of whimsical and I wouldn't say simple palette, but it's not a lot of color blending in my
Right,
mind.
right.
It's just stark one color, another color, another color, another color,
Yeah,
and it comes together to create it pops, I
yeah.
guess would be like a real simple term for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, I've kind of stepped away from them a little bit, but halftones are a big thing for me for a while, and like halftones are a lot of times what they used in the comic books, like get to give that shading, to give that modeling.
Mhm.
And I mean, I follow a ton of artists that do it beautifully, and if I tried to do I mean, I'm sure it'd be okay, but I think it's so much more. I really keep coming back to that, very flat, very like textured color. It's nice too that you had mentioned the word whimsical, because that's a way that I a lot of times will describe the stuff I do was in terms of whimsy. I I don't even know why, but for some reason I always kind of like recoil a little bit if anyone uses the word cartoony, which there are elements to that. I have, like bigger hands, bigger heads, and I exaggerate these things within my artwork. So there is like that element to it, but the whimsical take feels much better to me. It feels much more,
Oh,
and I don't know
good.
why that is. Yeah. So, and it
Yeah, I
all is
wouldn't
kind of
say
it's
I
informed.
yeah, I wouldn't say cartoony. No, that's why I said whimsical.
There
How
you go.
how has your have you been, evolving as you've gone along? Is your work kinda different now? Has it gotten better in your mind?
Yeah, I think it absolutely has, and a lot of it actually comes from learning more about the screen printing process, to be honest. And
Mm.
even as recently as last year, which was year number 15 that I've been
Mm-hmm.
doing these things. Even as recently as last year, I learned like 3 different things from some of my peers that I'm like, why have I not been doing this the entire time? So each one of these kind of things that you learn kind of elevates the art, like the artwork in a way. You're like, okay, what can I push now? What can I get away with now?
Yeah.
How fine a detail can I print? And then you just I think like if you look at poster number 1, it's much bigger shapes versus a poster that I've done recently. It's like all these smaller shapes and smaller traps for screen printing and like smaller text. It's just as I've become more comfortable with that, I've tried to push as much as I can in terms of what I can get away with, and that all comes back to the art as well. Like in building the art, I built the art my very first poster knowing what I was capable of, and I do the same now. So the fact that I'm able to get away with more now from a screen printing process means I can push the art a little bit more.
And where did foils become? Why are they so like in demand? Is it because you
I don't
print
know.
fewer ones and it's like the
They,
second? It's always the variant of the
yeah,
show. And
I think that would probably be it. To be 100% honest, I am so excited when we get a request for those. I personally have not printed any because it's a little bit of a different process, but
oh,
I've had posters of mine printed on foil. But to be 100% honest, I use the white of the paper all the time, the white of the paper as like, a color. So when it becomes foil, it becomes, like under certain lights, it's light, under certain lights, it's dark. So
you're not
I
you're
don't
not a big fan.
I don't love the looks of them. Some of them are more
Oh, this is a good breaking news piece for
well,
Roadcase. Clinton Reno says he doesn't particularly like foils.
well, for my work, and because like I said, I use a lot with the white of the paper a lot. But someone like Status Serigraph out of is he in? Oh, he's gonna be mad at me.
I,
It's either Tennessee or Kentucky.
okay,
Justin Duggett.
they're close.
So
They're close
yeah.
enough. I can't tell you.
So, but his work lends itself beautifully to foil because it's all these beautiful shapes. Nate Duvall's as well, because his are like all these beautiful colored blocks. So, like certain artists' work really like would be beautiful on foils.
So have you ever okay, do you know you're gonna be doing a foil when you
No.
start the process? They just kinda like, "Oh, and we're gonna." I mean, if you're doing red rocks,
Yeah,
there's gonna be a foil, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
But I mean, it,
do you ever so would you change your design a little bit to accommodate that foil, and did you do that with red rocks when you were working with Guy Birdwell?
no, because we wanted because the initial run of on regular paper was so huge that obviously we wanted that to really sing. And I mean, they definitely worked on foil a little bit better than some of my other designs, maybe, but there's such a small there's such a small amount, and a lot of times, to be honest, they decide not to go with foils at the very end. So like
Oh, yeah,
to
so
do
you
a
don't wanna
design,
gear it towards that too much, right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, those have been fun to kind of see. And like I said, they're more costly to create, so a lot of times I'll decide not to do it at the very last minute. But it looks a lot
They'll
better.
decide not to, well, but they charge more for them too, so is it really
Yeah,
kinda
they do.
transparent? I mean, it's like the margin's still kind of the same, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it's funny because it's a different process even in terms of imprinting. They have to like let them dry for longer. They get scratched way easier. It's why I actually haven't tried it yet. I'm not there yet.
Oh, do you print your own, you print your own posters just for
Yep.
the regular variant?
Yep. Yep. For most of the time, I will say that like once it gets into, because I'm in Berkeley, I don't have an enormous space like I used to in Ohio. So I
Mhm.
don't my drying rack isn't quite as big. So I will say that I once it hits a certain number, if they want like over 150, then I'll kick it to someone else just because it's a lot. It's a lot of work to stack those posters that way.
Yeah,
So
I don't even know enough about that process um, to ask you any decent questions about it. I want I know we tried to connect a couple times because I told you my sister lives in Berkeley, so, I was
yep.
gonna come out to the studio, which I'm gonna bug you about the next time when it's safe to do so in the future, but, because 'cause I'm in Berkeley all the time, but and we didn't connect a couple of times in the past. But so that brings us to, when it's safe to do so, obviously that begs a question about COVID and, how are you managing? I mean, this is a show shutdown, no gig
Yep.
posters for particular. So, I mean, at the volume that it was, there's been some online streams that are doing posters. Where are you kind of at with that? And what's your, how have you been doing?
Well, I think that, I mean, fortunately, I have a 9 to 5 gig that I work, which I've been very fortunate to be able to have through this time. I know that it's been tough for a lot of gig poster artists, and I think that obviously there are those online stream shows like that Margo Price show that I did a poster for. Like those things do
Right.
happen,
Yep.
and there's still merchandise that's being created, like T-shirts and hoodies, because people still kind of will buy those. So there have been those opportunities, but I know that it has been it's been tough on a lot of gig poster artists, a lot of my peers, and even to talking about printing them myself. If a poster comes up recently, I've tried to kick it to a printer. Because they are obviously having some struggles as well. So different printers, I'll kick them a poster so that they can at least make some money on their end for that. Because if I've created the design, I'll get paid for what I do there. So I don't need to make, the additional money of printing them as well. So I've been trying to be a little bit cognizant of that, making sure that I'm able to do that when I can. But yeah, I know that it's been tough for sure. And hopefully, I think that they're starting to do some, like I know that there's a venue, the Caverns is starting to do some above ground.
Yeah, I saw that. I forget which band that was that just announced something.
I know St. Paul.
Oh yeah,
the Broken
St. Paul.
Bones.
Yeah. Yeah, that was it.
So I mean, I believe they created that venue specifically for this. So that'll be. I think that type of thing will.
Are you doing that poster?
No, I'm not doing that one. I'm doing one for a show there for another band. But yeah, it's obviously a tricky time, and we don't know what it looks like when it comes back, how soon it comes back. Fortunately, that the vaccine and everything is probably helping.
I mean, once bands come back, there's going to be I mean, you're back in business. Will you continue to work your 9 to 5? Have you always done that?
There was a time when I didn't have children that I did this full time, and it was fine. It was fun.
Yeah.
But obviously the children angle brings a lot of it requires a little bit more stability than the big poster world maybe provides.
Yep. I'm there with that too. What's your view on the aftermarket and how like prices will just completely explode for resales and such?
Well, it's interesting because I think probably my wife is frustrated by it, but once this is going to sound,
you're selling them for $30 when they're going for $250.
Right. This is going to sound insanely selfish, but like once I've given the band what they want, they've made their money. Once I've made the money that I make from it and I'm happy with it, then I'm good. I don't want to worry myself too much with that, because I could probably get really worked up if I found out that, some random dude in, Florida is selling this poster for $450 and he's going to get $450 for it. If I looked into that stuff too much, I might go crazy, and I'm trying to limit the amount of times and limit the news that I consume that makes me go crazy.
Yeah. So have you been doing other? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I haven't seen 450, but 200 isn't out of the question.
Yeah. It's nuts. Yeah. Especially those foils. Those foils go for quite a bit. I think 300 might be the highest I've seen. But yeah.
What about other kind of independent work that you're doing?
It's I will say I've been doing a lot of
besides doing amazing logos for podcasts.
Well, to be honest, I kind of stick with this quite a bit. I do any free time I have. I've actually been trying to create a bunch of art prints during this quarantine time that I've been printing here and there, and hope to release like in a timed schedule, because like I I mean, there are a million illustrators out there. So if there's any like editorial work and things like that, all those illustrators can handle that. The things that I do, well, I stick with those things, so I just continue to do them.
Yeah.
So a lot of art prints. I've been doing some, work here and there. It's almost always though somehow connected to the music world. So if it's either like t-shirts or hoodies or merchandise of any kind or album covers here and there, but I might have a random illustration that'll come up from a friend of mine that runs a magazine, somewhere, and I might do that. But to be honest,
Right.
I really enjoy all the screen printing aspect of things, as frustrating as it always is.
Yeah, yeah. Who were some of your major idols in this business? And
Um,
if there was another era that you could be doing this for, what would you like to, what would you like
um,
to do?
I think one of my two dudes down in Georgia, Methane Studios,
Who's
they're
that? Who's that at
Methane
Methane? Yeah, yeah.
Methane Studios. They are so good at what they do. It's insane. Um, Everything they post, everything they put up is just so well thought out, so beautiful. Um, and then I have, people whose work I love that I've also gotten to know well, so that even adds an element to it, like Strawberry Luna, Alice in Pennsylvania, and then of course Guy Burwell is amazing, and I've gotten to know him. Um, there are others. There are some people that I kind of look at aspirationally, but the styles aren't necessarily similar. So I just kind of look at them for how amazing they are. Like Rich
Yeah,
Kelly.
yeah.
Rich Kelly blows my mind.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
I thought about that because I actually saw the National at the Greek there in 2018, and Stanley Mouse
yep.
did a poster for that, which
Yeah.
he did, and he didn't put the venue or the date on the poster.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Except
What's funny
you would
is,
only know it's the year because he did like that really cool signature of Stanley Mouse. It's down in the bottom right-hand corner. It says 2018, but
nice,
other than
nice,
that, it was just the Greek theater show.
right? Yeah. Oddly enough, I have friends, like close friends, that personally know the National, and like either went to school with them or something like that. I'm not even sure what. And I've been
Yeah,
trying
right.
to I've been trying to do a National poster for the longest time, but I can't
Oh,
get a
we're
hold of
gonna get
anybody.
you. We're
Yeah,
gonna get
there you
you
go.
to do that.
Yeah.
We're gonna get you to do that now. Geez, I wish I had a contact over there.
Yeah, those dudes
Uh,
are those dudes are awesome.
they have great posters. It's so
Yep.
incredibly varied from show to show. It's
Yeah.
and they do such a great job at throwing people locally. Where are you on that? Like bands will come through Berkeley. Are this varying bands? Do they contact you more often when they come to do shows in the Bay Area, or do you see that, or are you just doing for some far flung venue and somewhere else?
It really depends on the band's tour, where they are. Like West Coast is not as often hit as maybe the
Yeah,
East
or
Coast seems to be.
densely populated either, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So a lot of times
I mean,
though,
in terms of venue, yeah.
right. And a lot of times though, the merch company will be like, okay, here are all the dates. What do you got? What do you want? So I'll look local first because that means I could drop it off, which is a huge help, as opposed to shipping, 150 posters somewhere and
Yeah.
hoping that they get there in time, hoping that they get there not damaged. So dropping them off is a huge thing. So I look local first. Then I'll look at Columbus and Cleveland and Cincinnati because, born and bred in Ohio, obviously I still have ties there. And even if I needed to, I could get someone local there in Columbus to print it if I wanted to, and have them kind of drop it off that way. But outside of that, it's just a matter of like, what's the band need me to do? If they need me to do a certain date, I'll do a certain date. But I try to pick local in Ohio pretty often. But
Mhm.
outside of that, I just get excited to do a poster in general. So I'll take whatever they give me.
Well, at least you don't have to feel bad because at least you lost out to Stanley Mouse when the National
Yeah,
played in the Greek theater, which is like in your backyard.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so for example, I did the Ray LaMontagne poster when he was here, and
That's an amazing one.
I tried to. Did something else for a Greek show recently too. But yeah, like that's
That's the
that's
one
a
with the
good
lantern
venue.
and the tree, right?
Yeah, That's a
That's so
beautiful
funny.
venue. It's really fun.
Which
So
one? Which venue was that?
the Greek and the
Yeah,
Greek
yeah, oh
Green.
yeah,
It's
the
just,
Greek.
it's really so cool.
Extraordinary. I love that place.
Yeah, I saw War on Drugs there, and that was unreal.
Yeah. Oh God,
So
they're so great. What's
War
a
on
band that
Drugs is another one.
is another one?
That's
War on
another one
Drugs.
I'd love to. Yeah, yeah, would
National
love to get a
National
hold of
War
those guys.
National War on Drugs. All right. So give me
There
what's
we
your
go.
third?
Um, my third, that's a good question. So I got to do a poster for St. Paul. That was amazing because I love those dudes. So I got to do one for that. That was a good one. And I actually had a contact for a split second at churches, but I think that they use a woman with whom they work a lot, and she does
Yeah.
amazing work. So I haven't wanted to step on that at all. But I think that those. Oh, I will say, Brian Fallon. I've been trying to get a hold. I've been trying to figure out a way to do some stuff for Brian, but he also has a good buddy that does a lot of work for him, and he does great work. So
Do you ever
yeah,
think of like do you ever see a band that's playing at a particular venue or hear of it, like do a sketch and just like send it? Like just go, "Hey, I could do this for you." Do you ever pitch yourself like that?
I
Get a good idea?
don't as much. I don't as much anymore, only because I know. I mean, like, excuse me, cold calls are so tricky, and
Yeah.
at the risk of maybe sounding arrogant, I'm busy enough as it is, like with the stuff that I need to actually do. So I don't want to take time away from that stuff for people that are, waiting on a sketch or waiting. If it got to a lull and I was a little bit bored, I might be like, oh, someone's playing Gilman down the street. Maybe I'll drop something off there. But yeah, actual emails or cold calls, I feel like they just go into the dustbin.
Yeah, believe
So
me, I've been
it's it's
I can relate.
yeah, it's more a matter of like if I could hand something to someone, I'd feel better about that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, this was great. This was great, Clinton. Thanks a lot for your thoughts and for
Yeah. Yeah.
your insight into the industry. I really appreciate it, man. I love talking to you. We'll go for another hour sometime, hopefully. And
Cool. Yeah.
we talk all the time. So yeah, I'm lucky to be able to chat with you. But I really appreciate your time and hanging out with me for a little bit
Yeah.
and just going over the process, man. I love it. And you know, I hope we're back soon, like everybody else hopes, and that you're doing amazing jacket posters uh, in
Yeah. Thank you.
as soon as absolutely possible. Not only because I want Jacket to get back on the road, but just I just want the whole operation to just start moving, and I want to see you do a national poster.
There we go. Yeah, yeah, this has been amazing. I will say I don't get as much of an opportunity now with there being no shows and such. I don't get as much opportunity to like talk shop. So this has been a lot of fun
Oh,
for
great,
sure.
great. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
For me too, man. For me too. I've been meaning to corner you for quite some time. So finally, I have an opportunity and a forum to do that, which is why I'm doing this because, I want to corner people and especially you because I admire your work. Just let me
Well,
say,
thank
like,
you.
I just admire your work so much. If that has not, hopefully, that has not been lost during this interview. I
I
mean,
appreciate it.
yeah, I do, man. Cool. So anyway, thanks a lot, Clinton. Thanks for being here
Yeah.
on Roadcase, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man.
Cheers.
Yep.
Okay, everyone, that was Clinton Reno on Roadcase, renowned poster artist for so many great bands that I love, and I love his work. I love his aesthetic, and it was just so cool to listen to his process and how he got into the business and listen to a little bit about the logistics of how posters get from inside his head into the paper through the merch companies that help out bands, distribute them, and come up with ideas that way through that process, what it's like to do a foil. And it was interesting to hear his opinions on that. And it was so interesting to hear Clinton talk about just being a kid who always had a pencil or something in his hand and was always sketching stuff from day one, who loved comic books and loves music and got into the gig poster world. And of course, I especially loved the My Morning Jacket story about a chance meeting with Bo Coster at a street fair in Columbus, Ohio, around about 2006, I think it was, and then gives him some posters, and then he gets a email from Jim James saying, hey, do some posters for us. So that was really fucking cool. And he wants to do some posters for The National, another favorite band of mine. So I hope that all comes together for Clinton. And I hope you all enjoyed hearing about this part of the live music scene and the live music world, because it is a really important one and something that is near and dear to my heart, the combination of art and music enshrining live shows forever on beautiful poster paper that you can frame and put up on your walls and create that kind of shrine to live music that way that I do where I live. So I want to thank all of you for tuning in today to listen to this special episode with gig poster artist Clinton Reno. I want to thank Clinton again for taking the time to be on Roadcase, and I'll see you on down the road. Thanks again so much for listening, and I'd like to encourage everyone to get involved with Roadcase. You can do so in a number of different ways. You can email me at info@roadcasepod.com with questions, comments, and even suggestions for guests. Or you can follow us on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We're at RoadcasePod, and we have a YouTube channel called Roadcase Podcast. And if you are able to and like to support Roadcase, we have a Patreon site at patreon.com/RoadcasePod. And of course, you can subscribe to this podcast on your favorite listening platform. And if you could please rate and review the podcast while you're there, that would be great. So I want to thank Walzer for this awesome theme music that we have. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to Roadcase. We have a lot of great episodes coming up, so I'll see you on down the road.